What if God felt lonely? What if, one quiet night, he picked up a phone, stared at the glowing icons, and downloaded Tinder not to fall in love, but to understand why his children had forgotten how to. The world was silent, but it didn't sleep. From above, earth shimmered not with the light of faith, but with the pulse of 1 billion screens. Tiny rectangles of light glowed in the dark, not candles. Not stars, but windows into souls, too busy to pray. Each glow whispered the same word, connection. And yet, no one truly touched anyone anymore. God appeared not in a church, not in the heavens, but in a small apartment lit by the cold blue of a screen. A woman sat awake at 3 a.m, scrolling, waiting for a message that would never come. Her coffee had gone cold. Her eyes were tired. Her heart even more so. God watched her and whispered, almost to himself, "They still wait for love, but not for me." So he decided to see what they were searching for. He opened the app, and a question appeared. Name, he typed God. The app blinked for a moment, then politely replied, "That name's already taken." He smiled, that slow, eternal kind of smile that carries both sorrow and humor. He tried again, "Just call me Light." Then came the next questions. Age? He hesitated. How do you measure eternity in numbers? He left it blank. Location? He typed, "Here." Because really, where else would he be? What are you looking for? He stared at the words for a long time. Finally, he wrote, "Something real." The profile went live. No trumpets. No miracles. Just the quiet hum of an overworked server and a small flicker of light in a city that never looked up anymore. And then he began to swipe. Each face he saw wasn't just an image, it was a fragment of a soul. A woman smiling with eyes that had forgotten joy. A man showing strength built on years of fear. A teenager pretending to be fearless, desperate for someone to notice him. An old woman who wasn't looking for love, just conversation. A priest, still wearing his collar, but unsure what he believed anymore. Swipe after swipe, God looked through the glow and saw what no one else did. Their loneliness, their quiet ache, their silent prayers disguised as casual jokes. He didn't swipe right to choose. He swiped right to forgive. Each motion was a small act of grace. Each like was a whisper of mercy. And as he moved through the endless gallery of faces, he began to hear the hidden meanings behind their words. I love adventures really meant I'm scared of being ordinary. Just here for fun really meant I've been hurt before. Don't catch feelings really meant please don't leave. God read every word, and he didn't laugh. Because once upon a time, people prayed like this too. They just began differently. They used to say, "Dear God." Now, they type, "Hey there." Time slipped quietly by. The night turned pale. Down below, every window in every city glowed like a digital cathedral, a place where people came to worship love, or at least the illusion of it. At 37 a.m. seat, God stopped. A profile appeared. A woman, 27. Eyes soft but empty. Bio. Tired of small talk. Just wants something real. For a moment, the world stilled. He could feel her heartbeat through the glass, faint, but honest. He whispered her name. She didn't hear it, but her phone flickered. And for a breath, her heart slowed, as if something unseen had reached out and touched it. God looked outside. No stars tonight. Only satellites drifting across the sky, man-made constellations searching for signal, just like the hearts below. He closed his eyes and sighed. The air trembled. The world had grown loud, but the silence between every heartbeat still belonged to him. He remembered when people used to look up to speak to him. Now, they looked down. Down at their phones, down at their screens, down into a world that promised connection but only offered reflections. And in that quiet realization, he understood. It wasn't Tinder that made them lonely. It was forgetting how to see without filters, forgetting how to wait, forgetting how to feel, forgetting how to believe. Still, God smiled. Because even here, in the glow of a billion small screens, he could still sense it, a heartbeat of hope, a light that refuses to die. He swiped again, not to find someone, but to find a way back into their hearts, back into their silence, back into the stillness where love still speaks the language of heaven. And maybe, just maybe, he would find one soul brave enough to stop swiping, to look up and realize he was never gone, that he had been waiting there all along, in every pause, in every sigh, in every beat between two notifications. Because the secret of every search is not about finding someone else. It's about remembering who's been there from the beginning. Maybe God never needed to swipe at all. Maybe he just wanted to see if anyone still knows how to look with the heart. If God had a Tinder profile, what would it say? Would he write a clever bio? Something witty and short? Or would he simply exist, wordless, radiant? Enough. When the app asked him to add a description, he hesitated. How do you describe what was never meant to be explained? He stared at the empty box for a while, the little blinking cursor waiting like an impatient angel. Then he wrote, name, light. Occupation, listening. Interests, love. Forgiveness. Second chances. Bio, I see you. And that was all. He didn't upload photos. There was no perfect angle, no filtered smile. Only light, soft, warm, and human enough to feel close. When the profile went live, it looked ordinary. And yet, something about it felt alive, like the screen itself was breathing. In a world where people spent hours crafting the perfect version of themselves, God's profile was unsettling in its honesty. He scrolled through the others: adventurer, wine lover, no drama, work hard, play harder. Just here for good vibes. Each bio sparkled like a mirror, reflecting everything except the truth. People laughed in their captions, but cried behind their screens. They wrote, "I don't need anyone," while silently begging, "Please choose me." They posed with confidence, but every pose hid the same fear, the terror of being unseen. God read thousands of bios that night, and each one, beneath the humor and the hashtags, carried the same wound. Humans were no longer afraid of sin. They were afraid of silence. They couldn't stand to face themselves, so they filled the quiet with endless swipes, hoping noise could save them from their own echo. He scrolled until dawn began to rise, and he could almost hear it, the heartbeat of a generation terrified of not being liked. They sought validation like oxygen. They counted matches as proof of worth. They measured love by distance, and faith by attention span. And still, none of them looked up. He thought about the old prayers, the ones whispered in candlelight, where words trembled because they mattered. Back then, people spoke to him like he was listening. Now, they spoke into the void, hoping an algorithm would understand. A young man's profile caught his eye. "Don't message me unless you're perfect." God smiled sadly. Perfection, that word humans had twisted so well. If only he knew how much beauty there was in imperfection, how grace was born only from broken things. God wanted to tell him, "I made you incomplete so that love could complete you." But the app didn't have a button for that. He kept reading. A woman's bio, recovering from love. Be patient. Another, I don't believe in forever, but I still check who viewed me. Each sentence carried loneliness like perfume, something invisible but impossible to ignore. He realized something then. Humans feared rejection, not because they wanted love, but because they'd forgotten how to love themselves. They longed to be chosen, not realizing they already were. God remembered the first time he breathed life into them, how they opened their eyes, unfiltered, unguarded, pure. They didn't need likes to know they mattered. They just were. And that was enough. But now, centuries later, they edited their own faces, reshaped their smiles, blurred their scars, trying to erase the fingerprints he left behind. They wanted to be flawless. But perfection was never holy. It was empty. It had no story, no pain, no redemption. He sighed, scrolling through a sea of beautiful illusions. He could see them all clearly, as if each bio was a confession whispered to the sky. I'm fine. I'm happy. I've moved on. He could feel the truth behind each line. I'm breaking. I'm lonely. I wish someone still believed in me. He paused. His own profile, the one that simply said, I see you, sat quietly among millions of others. Almost invisible. No likes. No messages. No matches. And that's when he realized something deeper. It wasn't that people didn't believe in God anymore. They just didn't have time for him. They scrolled past him the way they scrolled past sunsets, not out of hatred, but out of habit. They were too busy chasing light to notice the source of it. So he waited. That's what he had always done best. He waited through ages, through wars, through silence. And now, he waited again in an app designed for instant love, waiting to be found by someone who still looked deeper than a screen. And yet, he felt no anger, only tenderness. Because every time someone laughed through their pain, every time someone pretended they didn't care, he saw a spark, a fragile echo of the divine still alive within them. Humans were learning how to hide better, but they were still his. He thought of changing his bio to make it sound more appealing, timeless. Good listener. Knows all your songs. Maybe even a wink emoji. He chuckled at the thought. But no, that wasn't him. He wanted to stay real, even in a world that wasn't. And in that decision, there was a strange beauty, because even surrounded by millions of fake smiles and filtered faces, he remained the only one who showed up as himself. Hours passed. Still no matches. But he didn't mind. He wasn't here to be chosen. He was here to remind that love wasn't found by swiping. It was found by seeing, by stopping, by being. The city outside began to wake. Screens dimmed as sunlight touched the walls. People stretched, checked their phones, and hurried out into the world still half asleep. God's screen stayed bright for a moment longer. And as he looked at his own profile, so simple, so quiet, he smiled again. He didn't need a description. Light introduces itself. On Tinder, people swipe through faces. But God, he swipes through souls. Every image that flickered before his eyes carried more than a smile or a pose. It carried history. It carried longing. It carried silence. And he could see all of it not as pixels, but as fragments of light and shadow, pulsing like living prayers beneath the skin. The app moved fast, too fast for hearts that still beat slow. But he took his time. He didn't swipe in rhythm with the algorithm. He moved to the rhythm of pain and hope, to the tempo of loneliness echoing inside the hearts of his children. A woman appeared first, her laughter caught mid-air. Her face tilted toward the camera. In her picture, she looked alive. But through the glow, he saw her sitting alone in her kitchen, her phone screen lighting the tears on her cheeks. Her bio said, love, traveling, love, good food. But her eyes said, please, just love me back. Next came a man flexing in a mirror, the angles sharp, the lighting perfect. He wanted to look powerful, but his soul trembled under the weight of never being enough. He had written, no drama, no games. And yet, every breath he took was another battle with shame. Then there was a girl, maybe 16, too young to understand what she was offering to the world. She smiled as if she had never been hurt. But God saw the messages she never told her mother about. The ones that made her feel smaller each time she replied. He stopped swiping. For a moment, he simply watched the stream of humanity flow past. So much beauty, so much noise. Every soul reaching out through glass, trying to be chosen, trying to be loved, trying to be seen. And God whispered, "Do you not know that I already chose you?" The words disappeared into the night. No one heard them. The world had grown too loud for whispers. He swiped again. This time, the image was of an older man, grey hair, tired smile. Bio, just looking for company. God could feel the man's house around him, the silence, the empty chair at the kitchen table, the framed photo of a woman long gone. He remembered when the man used to pray beside that same chair, back when he still believed someone was listening. Swipe. A single mother holding her child, her bio full of light jokes. Swipe. A comedian who made everyone laugh, but whose last message before bed was to no one. Swipe. A woman whose faith had cracked, who stopped praying years ago, but still whispered please into the dark before sleep. The more he looked, the more he saw, every face hiding a small universe, every smile masking a storm, every heartbeat searching for home. The app was supposed to connect them, but all he saw were parallel lives, circling one another without touching. They were close, yet galaxies apart. He thought about Eden, how once there had been no swipes, no profiles, no fear of rejection. Just two souls, unfiltered, standing before each other with nothing to hide. Now, love was data. Intimacy was an algorithm. And heaven was a concept stored in the cloud. Still, he didn't turn away. He couldn't. There was something tragically beautiful about how humans kept trying. Even after being hurt, even after being ignored, they still opened the app again. They still hoped. Hope, that stubborn ember that refused to die, was the most divine thing left in them. He smiled. Bittersweet. Even broken, they still reached for love. And love, in all its fragile imperfection, was still the closest thing to him. A new profile loaded, a young woman sitting under city lights, eyes half closed as if she'd stopped believing in dawn. Her bio said, "Faithless but kind." God lingered. That word faithless, it hurt, but not because she denied him. It hurt because he saw how much she had once believed. He remembered her prayers from years ago, whispered beneath blankets, when she still thought he was listening. She used to ask for signs. Now she only asked for company. And though she no longer called his name, he still knew the sound of her breath when she sighed. He reached out through the screen, not with hands, but with presence, and for a second, she looked up. She didn't know why. Maybe it was just a flicker, a shift in the light. But for that one heartbeat, she felt less alone. That was enough for him. He continued swiping. Face after face, soul after soul, some full of laughter, others hollow with exhaustion. He didn't judge. He just looked. He just listened. And in every look, there was love, quiet, patient, endless. He saw a man delete the app after his 100th failed match, murmuring, "Maybe I'm just not worth it." God wanted to tell him, "You were worth everything from the start." But there was no chat box for that either. He saw a woman swipe through profiles while sitting beside her husband, lonely in a marriage built on silence. He saw a teenager fall asleep clutching her phone, dreaming of being chosen. He saw a man praying to be noticed, and another praying to forget. And for each of them, he whispered something small, not words, but warmth. A quiet peace that settled for only a second. The kind that felt like remembering something you didn't know you lost. That was how he loved them, not through miracles, but through presence. As dawn began to spill across the city, he stopped swiping. He just watched as the world stirred awake. People stretching, checking notifications, counting likes before sunlight. And he realized he didn't need them to find him. He just needed them to pause long enough to feel him. Because some souls don't need a match. They just need to be seen, even once, by someone who looks beyond the surface. He smiled one last time, closed the app, and whispered to the morning air, "You are already loved." But the world was busy again. No one heard him. Only the light in the sky answered, the same light reflected in every face he'd just seen. And maybe that was enough. Even God can make mistakes. Or so it seemed. That night, the app felt heavier in his hand. The glow of the screen painted his face in quiet light, the kind of light that belonged more to memory than to fire. He had seen so many souls already, drifting through pixels, reaching out to no one in particular. But this time, something in him hesitated. He stared at the screen for a long while before swiping. And then he did. A single motion. Right. Almost instantly, the app chimed, "It's a match." He paused. Even for him, the words carried a strange weight. The profile belonged to a woman. Her photo was simple, no filters, no smile. Her bio read, "I used to believe in God. Then I stopped." He lingered on the sentence. It wasn't anger that rose in him, but something tender, almost human-like sadness mixed with recognition. He opened the chat. The blinking cursor waited, but he didn't know what to say. What does eternity text to someone who gave up on forever? After a moment, he typed one word, "Hi." The reply came fast. "Who are you?" He thought about telling her the truth, but truth rarely survives when spoken too soon. So he answered softly, "Someone who listens." She didn't reply. The screen dimmed. He waited. He had always been good at waiting. Minutes passed. Then came the message. "You sound like God." He smiled faintly. "Would that be a good thing or a bad thing?" She typed. Deleted. Typed again. Finally, she wrote, "Neither." Just impossible. He could almost hear her voice, tired but sharp, the voice of someone who had prayed once and felt the silence too long. So he said, "Maybe the impossible is closer than you think." No reply. Just 3 dots blinking, like a heartbeat caught between doubt and longing. Then came her words, raw and quiet. "If you're real, where were you when I needed you?" He froze. Not because he didn't have an answer, but because no answer would ever be enough. He whispered, "I was there." She wrote back instantly, Don't say that. Everyone says that. Everyone says time heals, or God has a plan, or everything happens for a reason. But where were you when it actually hurt? Her anger was not rebellion, it was heartbreak. And God, for once, didn't want to sound divine. He wanted to sound human. I was in the silence. He wrote, "The silence you thought was empty." She didn't answer for a long while. Then, that silence almost killed me. He closed his eyes. He remembered every night she had cried into her pillow, every moment she had whispered please into the dark. He had been there not as thunder, not as miracle, but as breath, as pulse, as persistence. But how do you explain presence to someone who only remembers absence? He typed slowly. Sometimes silence is not distance. It's the sound of me holding everything together while you fall apart. The typing bubble blinked again, then disappeared. She was reading. He could feel her heartbeat from across the distance, a faint rhythm, steadying. Finally, she replied, "That's beautiful. But it's not enough." And he understood. Because faith isn't born from beauty. It's born from pain. So he wrote, "I know." And for a moment, there was nothing, no words, no light, no sound. Just 2 souls, one divine, one broken, suspended in the same digital silence, both trying to understand each other. She sent one last message. "You don't know what it feels like to lose everything." He looked at the words and whispered to himself, "I do." He remembered the garden, the first betrayal, the first tear, the centuries of watching his children destroy what they'd been given, not out of hatred, but out of fear. He remembered the cross, the silence after the cry, the ache of separation. Yes, he knew loss, but he didn't send that message. Some truths are meant to be felt, not explained. The chat went quiet. Minutes turned into hours. The sun began to rise, and God still stared at the screen, hoping she would come back online. Then, one more message appeared. "If you really are who you say you are, why match with me?" He typed, "Because you stopped looking for me, but I never stopped looking for you." The typing bubble returned, paused, then vanished again. No reply. But he felt something shift, a warmth, a spark, a fragile thread of faith reawakening after years of sleep. And he realized he hadn't swiped wrong. He had swiped where grace was needed most. Every match, even the broken ones. It was another chance to love someone who forgot they were still worth loving. Maybe that was what right really meant. Not perfect. Not easy. Just chosen, even when undeserved. He closed his eyes. He placed the phone on the table and whispered into the dawn. You don't need to believe in me for me to love you. Outside, the city began to stir. Somewhere, the woman woke up, looked at her phone, and saw no new messages. But for some reason, her chest felt lighter. She didn't know why. God smiled. He didn't need her reply. Love doesn't always need to be answered. It just needs to be given. And maybe that's what people call a mistake. But for him, it was grace. He didn't swipe wrong. He only swiped human. The notification arrived without fanfare. No choir. No trumpet. Just a small vibration on a bedside table and 2 words glowing in the dark, the way embers hold on to heat after the fire has quieted. It's a match. God did not smile. He lowered his eyes, as if bowing, and breathed a prayer into the room that did not need air to carry it. Not the kind of prayer that asks, the kind that steadies. On the screen was a woman whose pictures did not try to be perfect. A stray hair crossing her forehead. A sweater with a loose thread. A smile that looked like it belonged to yesterday more than today. Her bio said almost nothing, and somehow it said everything. He could feel the way she entered rooms quietly, carrying her own weather. He could feel the way she stayed for other people after everyone else went home. He could feel the list she kept of things she would never say out loud. He opened their chat. No fireworks. No icebreakers. Only the soft blue field where words could live or die depending on courage. He did not send a joke. He did not send advice. He sent a pause long enough for the soul to gather itself, and then a single line. I am here. The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. He waited. He had been waiting since the first dawn, and waiting had never made him smaller. When her sentence finally arrived, "Here's it the plays," was not a question and not a greeting. It was a confession without ceremony. I am tired of choosing and never being chosen. He read it the way a physician reads a pulse, not to judge but to understand where the rhythm breaks. He answered simply, "Rest here." She wrote back that rest is what people say when they have never been awake through the kind of nights she knows. She wrote that rest is what you find when rent is paid and the past behaves and the heart cooperates. She wrote that she had believed in big words once, but small words are the only ones that have stayed. Bread. Rain. Door. Hand. Stay. He did not argue. He sent her the smallest word he knew that still carried an ocean inside it. Stay. She did not sign off. She did not leave. The chat became a bench in a quiet park before sunrise, and 2 shadows sat there without the need to name themselves. She told him about the man who loved vanishing acts and the mirror he left behind. She told him about her father who spoke in silence and her mother who spoke in storms. She told him about the way she says it is fine when it is not, and how the body keeps the score even when the mouth refuses to read it. He let her speak. When she stopped, not because she had nothing more, but because the heart can only lift so much at once, he said something so simple it startled the room. "You do not have to earn breath." The phone screen softened, as if light had learned gentleness. Somewhere in the city, a truck downshifted on an empty avenue. Somewhere, a kettle clicked off. Somewhere, a baby turned in sleep and remembered the sound of a heartbeat it used to live inside. It's a match did not mean romance that night. It meant recognition. It meant two signals finding each other in the same storm and realizing neither had been broken, only drowned out. It meant one soul put down its weapons and the other did not advance. He told her no biography was required here. He told her the truth does not demand makeup. He told her grace is not a performance metric. She wrote that grace sounds like a word invented by poets who never paid by the hour to speak to a stranger in a lit room with a box of tissues between them. He answered that poets learned the word from people who survived and kept their hands open anyway. She sent a picture of her window. Nothing special in it. A brick wall across the alley. A slice of morning that did not know it had arrived yet. He looked at the frame and saw every small mercy it had ever held. He saw the night she pressed her forehead to that glass and chose not to vanish. He saw the afternoon she wrote an apology she did not owe, simply because she remembered the weight of the apologies she had never received. He saw the plant on the sill that kept insisting on green. He typed slowly, as if speaking to a shy animal. "You are not hard to love. You are hard to reach in a world that refuses to slow down." She asked him what love has to do with slowness. He told her that speed keeps the surface warm while the depths freeze. He told her that the heart is not a machine and time is not a thief when you are with yourself. He told her that the first tenderness is the one you extend toward your own tired body when it asks for water, for sleep, for a voice that does not sharpen itself before speaking. It's a match became a small room with doors on both sides. On her side, the door had 3 locks, installed by years that trusted the worst version of a rival. On his side, the door had never been closed, only misunderstood. He did not push. He waited until she put the first key in and turned it. The click was not loud. It did not wake the neighbors. But heaven hears small sounds as if they were thunder. She wrote that forgiveness is expensive. He agreed. She asked who pays. He said love pays and never sends a bill. She told him she did not know how to forgive the one who broke her. And he asked her to consider forgiving the younger self, who kept trying to fix what was not hers to repair. She asked, how? He told her to start with a hand over the heart and a sentence spoken like the beginning of rain. I did not know then what I know now. I choose gentleness for the person I was when I did not have it. She did not answer for a long time. Then she wrote that the room had changed temperature and she could breathe lower in her chest again. He did not say miracle. He did not say proof. He said yes. The simple kind that lets the body believe the world is possible. The sun was lifting the edge of the city when another message arrived from someone else. A man who had matched as well. His words were short, sharp, looking for a game he could win quickly. God did not shame him. He saw that the man was not cruel but frightened, and that cruelty is fear's cheap clothing. He told the man a joke gentle enough to make the armor loosen without cracking. He told him he looked strong in a way that could include softness without losing its name. The man wrote back a laughing face and then typed a story he had never written to anyone. That was a match too, he thought. Not because the app said it, but because a gate had opened where a wall had been and the air smelled different. Across the day, the phrase kept repeating. A nurse on a break matched with the quiet in a stairwell and decided to drink water before walking back into fluorescent light. A teacher matched with a memory of why she began and let it steady her voice before the students arrived. A boy matched with the idea that apologizing does not make him smaller and sent a message that repaired a small bridge before it fell. A mother matched with her own laughter for the first time in months and felt the room learn the sound of it again. God watched each of these and did what he is best at when the world is too quick to name and too slow to notice. He blessed. By afternoon, the app was buzzing like a hive, but his attention did not break. He learned the shapes of these small salvations, how they arrive disguised as ordinary decisions. The refusal to send the text that hurts a little too cleverly, the choice to close the laptop and walk outside without headphones, the way a stranger holds a door and does not wait to be thanked. Matches. All of them. Not two profiles meeting. Heaven and earth touching for a breath long enough to remember the old language. He wrote to the woman again. The first one. The one with the weathered smile. He did not ask for more story. He gave her back one she had lost. You are not late to your own life. She answered that everyone else seems ahead. He told her comparison steals every arrival and leaves the house unlocked for grief. He told her the body keeps a calendar, no clock understands. He told her some flowers bloom at night and the sun is not insulted. It's a match sounded again in the evening, but now it carried a different meaning in his hands. It had become a bell, and bells belong to thresholds. He began to think of the phrase not as a verdict, but as a doorframe, something you pass through into a room where you can see more clearly. He thought of how many times people had begged to be chosen without realizing the choosing had already happened before names and photos existed. He thought of the first breath ever taken and the way the universe answered it by expanding, making space for the second. When darkness returned, she sent one last message. I forgave a little today. Not everything. Not everyone. But a corner of it loosened. He did not congratulate. He did not grade. He said what the heart understands better than applause. Enough for now. She wrote that the room felt lighter, though the furniture had not moved. He told her the heaviness had been the furniture. He told her space is a kind of love. He told her most people do not know where to put their pain, so they put it on themselves and call it personality. She sent 3 words that were not clever and not small. Thank you for staying. He closed his eyes and, for a moment no one could measure, let himself feel the weight of that sentence. Not because he needed gratitude, because presence had been recognized, and recognition is how love takes root without spectacle. The city quieted. The river loosened. The bridges exhaled. The streetlights looked less like instructions and more like reminders. In apartments and shelters and hospital rooms, the same notification pulsed in places with no phones and no networks. It's a match. A father chose not to repeat a sentence that hurt his son the first time. A woman chose to eat. A caretaker chose to ask for help. A stranger chose to listen past the second answer. A teenager chose to live. He put the phone face down and let darkness be darkness without fear. He did not need to see the light to trust it. He did not need to speak to be heard. He did not need to be chosen to keep choosing. Love had entered the day quietly, and quiet was how it would stay. Not because it was fragile, but because it did not need noise to convince anyone it was true. The app would call it matching. He would call it remembering. Either way, the same thing kept happening in the space between beats. When he picked up the phone again, he did not rush. He opened the chat with the woman whose rest had started to sound like breathing and sent her a sentence to keep near the place where the ribs widen. You are allowed to be held by what you cannot see. She read it twice and did not answer. She did not need to. Somewhere inside her chest, a door she had not built unlocked itself. It's a match. The screen whispered again, and this time he let the corners of his mouth lift. Not because the app told him something new, but because love had used a small, ordinary road to arrive where it belongs. He prayed once more, the kind of prayer that does not request and does not bargain. The kind that looks at a day and names it good even when it was difficult. The kind that blesses the pieces for being pieces on their way to becoming. Then he set the phone down and let the night keep its silence, which is another name for room made ready. If heaven ever used text bubbles, it would look exactly like this. 3 dots, blinking, holding 1,000 unsaid words. That night, the screen glowed again in God's hand. He didn't open any new chats. He didn't swipe. He just sat in the dark, watching the tiny dots appear and vanish in silence. Someone was typing, then stopping, then typing again. The rhythm of hesitation, the human heartbeat translated into code. He could almost hear her breath through it, the same woman from before, the one who was learning how to stay. She was writing something she wasn't sure she wanted to send. He could feel the weight of her words, pressing against her ribs. Fear, hope, memory. The same emotions that once filled cathedrals now filled a message box. Then nothing. The dots vanished. She didn't send it. And he smiled. Because sometimes silence is louder than speech. Sometimes the message you never send is still heard. He whispered softly, "It's okay. I already read it." She didn't know why, but in her apartment, the air grew lighter. Heaven has always spoken in strange ways. Some people call it coincidence. Others, timing. But God knows its language, just quieter than most can bear. He looked at his screen again. So many unsent messages, tiny ghosts of courage, hovering just before flight. I miss you. I forgive you. I'm sorry. Please don't leave. Each one glowing faintly like candles in a storm. He could see them all. Every unsent text, every deleted confession, every draft someone wrote, then erased out of fear of rejection, all of them floated up to him like prayers that never found words. He read them one by one. The mother who typed to her son but never hit send. The man who wrote an apology to the woman he once loved, then deleted it. The child who wanted to tell his father he was scared. The friend who wanted to say I love you but thought it was too late. Every message that died on a fingertip reached heaven anyway. Because love doesn't need to be sent to be real. He thought of the first words ever spoken on earth, how they had once been enough. Now, humans filled silence with noise, afraid that quiet meant emptiness. They didn't realize silence was still his favorite place to speak. And so he began to write a message of his own. Not with fingers, but with light. It appeared first in small things. A song that played at the right moment. A text received from someone long forgotten. A sudden memory of peace during a sleepless night. Little nudges that said, "You're not alone." That was his reply to every unsent prayer. He opened the app again. A new match appeared, a man this time. Middle-aged, wearing exhaustion like a second skin. His bio said, "Just tired." Nothing more. No jokes. No filters. God liked the honesty of it. He sent the first message. "You've carried too much." The man didn't reply for hours. Then finally, "I don't even know who I'm talking to." God wrote, "Someone who's been waiting for you to rest." The man laughed through text. "You sound like my conscience." God replied, "Maybe. Or maybe just someone who remembers who you were before you got tired." That was enough. The man didn't respond again. But he didn't delete the chat either. He reread it before bed, then placed the phone on his chest and closed his eyes. And God counted that as prayer. Because prayer isn't words. It's what happens when something inside you listens instead of speaks. He began to notice how often people almost spoke, almost reached out, almost said, "I love you," almost said, "I need help," almost said, "I forgive you." The world was full of almost unfinished stories, trembling on the edge of courage. He wondered if humanity knew how sacred almost was, how close it already is to grace. He typed something into the app, not to anyone specific, just to the world itself. "I hear the words you don't say." And though no one saw it, the message spread like sunlight through invisible wires. It touched a nurse standing outside a hospital, thinking of quitting. It touched a man sitting alone in traffic, whispering to no one. It touched a child crying in the dark. And they all paused just for a second, feeling something they couldn't name. That was his reply delivered. Later that night, he wrote another message but didn't send it. He looked at the blinking cursor and thought of all the times he had spoken through thunder, through scripture, through tears, and how humanity still didn't listen. Maybe, he thought, this time he wouldn't speak at all. He closed the chat window and whispered, "Let silence say it for me." And that's when it happened, 1,000 tiny moments lighting up the earth all at once. A husband turned off his phone and really listened to his wife. A stranger returned a lost wallet. A girl forgave her friend without needing an apology. A boy prayed for the first time in years, not because he wanted something, but because he wanted to say thank you. None of them knew it, but every one of those moments was his unsent message delivered. When he looked at his phone again, there were no notifications, no matches, no messages, just the same blank space, waiting. He smiled. The app wasn't broken. It was resting like the world, between heartbeats. And in that stillness, he finally understood why he loved humans so deeply, because even in their silence, they were still trying. They still reached out. They still hoped someone was listening. He whispered into the empty screen, "I am." The light dimmed. The city slept. And somewhere, a phone on a nightstand glowed faintly as if heaven had just typed, but decided not to. Send. One evening, without warning, he closed the app. No reason, no grand revelation, just stillness. The kind of quiet that feels like the air before dawn, or the pause between the last note of a song and the echo that follows it. The screen dimmed. The world kept glowing. And God watched as life continued without him, people laughing, scrolling, swiping, forgetting. He didn't leave because he was disappointed. He left because he had seen enough. Enough longing. Enough pretending. Enough small moments of love that still bloomed despite the noise. It was never his world to control, only to love. And tonight, he was tired not in a divine way, but in the quiet, human way that comes from caring too deeply. He set the phone beside him and whispered, "It's time for them to remember without me speaking." And so, he logged out. No one noticed. There were no messages, no notifications, no warning. But something subtle changed. The night grew softer. The algorithms slowed. For the first time in a long time, silence felt safe again. Somewhere, the woman he once matched with woke up in the middle of the night. She didn't know why. She checked her phone, no new messages. Still, she smiled. Her chest felt lighter, and she fell asleep, holding that peace like a small bird. God watched her through the thin veil between dreams and dawn. He didn't intervene. He just let her rest. He looked around the earth, billions of lights, billions of stories, billions of half-written prayers drifting through wireless air. Each one searching. Each one beautiful. He realized he didn't need to send messages anymore. They were already written in forgiveness, in laughter, in the simple act of staying when it's easier to leave. A nurse held the hand of a patient who couldn't speak. A man forgave his father without saying a word. A child closed her eyes and whispered a prayer she didn't know she remembered. All of it, every act, every breath, every heartbeat was conversation. The world didn't know he'd logged out, because the truth was, he was never really in the app. He was always in them. In their ache. In their trying. In the fragile way they still reached out even after breaking. He looked at the phone one last time. The screen reflected his own light back at him, small, trembling, infinite. He smiled and whispered, "You've learned to speak without me." And somewhere, a quiet wind moved through the city. It brushed against windows, tangled itself in curtains, slipped beneath doors, and found its way into bedrooms where people slept. In one of those rooms, the woman stirred. Her phone buzzed once, no message, just a gentle hum. She didn't wake. She turned slightly, a soft breath escaping her lips, and for the first time in years, she dreamed of light. God watched her. Watched the way peace finally looked good on her face. He felt the kind of tiredness that isn't burden, but completion. He leaned back, eyes closing. The world exhaled with him. And as he drifted into that rare, sacred stillness, not gone, not asleep, just resting in love, the whole earth felt it. A calm beneath the noise, a warmth under the dark, a voice without sound, saying what he had been saying since the beginning. I never left. And somewhere, someone's phone slipped from their hand in the middle of the night. The screen dimmed. The room fell quiet. And for a fleeting moment, heaven and earth breathed together. God fell asleep, and the world for once slept in peace.